This is Tom Morgan from The Leading Edge, and today we are extremely glad to have Tara Springett with us. She is an author, Tibetan Buddhist teacher, Qigong teacher, and psychotherapist. She's also been hugely influential within our community. And today I am joined by the gentleman I lovingly refer to as our Chief Mystical Officer at The Leading Edge, Jeff Williams. And he's going to explain on a more personal note why we are talking to Tara today. Jeff, take it away, mate.
So, Tara, first off, thank you, Tom. Tara, welcome. It's such a pleasure. I often tell the story of how a couple of years ago I suffered this major ego blow, and I was really down about it. And instead of handling it the way maybe I typically would, which may not have been ideal, I just simply said to myself, I want to have a high consciousness response. I didn't even know what I meant by that. I didn't know where the question came from, but I just kept repeating it. I want to have a high consciousness response. And after a couple of weeks, through a series of events, your book, The Stairway to Heaven, ended up in my hands. And of course, that book lays out your framework of higher consciousness, and it changed my life. It opened me up to the mystical world and even eventually helped lead me to Tom. Um, and that book was so life-changing for me. It's become very popular within our group, The Leading Edge. So, question, can you begin by giving the audience a brief summary of the stages of consciousness in your framework, and maybe tell us how you developed the model and why you feel it seems to be more practical and impactful than some of the more widely known existing frameworks of consciousness?
Yes, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to take you through this. So we have 9 stages of consciousness. It starts with the innocence level. Here, people are usually part of a tightly knit group, like a family. They only function in a group. If they're all alone, they'll find that very hard. And they have the enviable state of being unburdened by self-doubt. They don't worry, do I look good enough? Am I successful enough? Do I have enough clicks on Instagram or any of that? For them, the world is good, they are good, everything's fine. Now, that sounds very enviable, but there are some downsides to it. These people are often very gullible because they're too trusting, so they can easily be duped. They're also weak. So if they belong to a minority or in a society, they cannot really speak up for themselves. They can easily be oppressed. And they're also prone to addictions and promiscuity and get into trouble with divorce and with these types of things. And so it's not all good. And then if they get into too much trouble, they might go up to the next stage, which is the dominance stage of consciousness. And when people go on this stage, the first thing they notice that they don't measure up. Everybody is ahead of them. And that causes a lot of rage in them, narcissistic rage. And they might get very angry, very aggressive. They might are prone to violence, criminal activity, lying, all these not very nice things. And we might think this is a catastrophic breakdown from the beauty of the innocent stage. But here on the dominance stage, people have access to a power, which is their willpower, because the innocence people, they didn't have so much willpower, no motivation, they didn't achieve much. They might feel good, but there was no development. And in the dominant stage, people have access to this willpower. And eventually, when they have enough problems or repercussions, they might go up to the next stage, which is the obedience stage. And here, people might say, I joined the military to sort myself out, and the sergeant is shouting down my ear, and I show self-restraint, or they join a fundamentalist church, and where they are threatened by, if you don't do this, then you will go to hell, and they kind of want that. And in the obedience stage, They also believe in a very hierarchical world view. Top is God, and then saints and priests and men, women, children. So women actively participating in upholding patriarchy at this stage, which is a bit strange for the other stages to see. And but it gives them some comfort, and everything is divinely assigned, and you have your place, and whether you like it or not, you must stay there. And now, on the surface, people are better behaved than the dominance people, but they still have a lot of rage, and that rage comes out in bigotry, in racism, sexism, misogyny, all this stuff. And these people can be very cruel in that way. And we can see this type of behavior in some type of political developments very clearly, that people behave in this way. And then we wonder, why are they so cruel? Because they're on the obedience stage. Now, what gets them out of this obedience stage is maybe a form of betrayal. Their favorite politician is corrupt, or the priest is visiting prostitutes, or these people can also be communists, or the communist leader has a private little business or something like that, and not sharing what they have. And so they experience that betrayal, and then they lose their faith, or they simply get higher education, and they learn rational thinking, asking for evidence, and not just believing in the holy book or in the Communist Manifesto. And then they might go to the ambition stage of consciousness, and here they have access to rational thinking, which is for the first time, because the innocence stage believes just in superstition. The dominant stage is just led by emotions. The obedience stage is dogma, and the ambition stage now can use the scientific model, ask for evidence. Their belief in general equality, everybody have the same chances to achieve. And so it's very liberating. And so there's more equality between men and women. The only downside of the ambition stage is that it is spiritually very dissatisfying. So people can maybe earn a lot of money. And we hear those stories, somebody became super rich, and then they felt that inner emptiness. They sat on their yacht and thought, and now what? I still feel empty. And then they ask for more. And this crisis might then bring them up to the sharing stage of consciousness. And at the sharing stage of consciousness, people are very much into everything that's natural. Nature should be preserved, ecology, natural childbirth, natural nutrition, everything should be natural. And people have a wide circle of friends, which then nurture. They very much are interested in their own emotions. They might go to psychotherapy now. They want to feel good. And we've seen this development, people going to the sharing stage, hugely accelerated in the last few decades in our society. And even in my lifetime, it has very much changed. The problem with the sharing stage that lots of people feel as victims here. They believe, I'm traumatized by my upbringing. Society doesn't let me live in this beautiful way in harmony with nature because I can't earn my money like this. And they have a lot of sadness and victim mentality about this. And they also have a bad relationship with power. They believe all power is evil, which of course is not true. And so they cut everybody with the lawnmower. So even high achieving people get cut to size and say, your intelligence is not wanted here. You're just the same like everybody else. So it is very oppressive for the higher achieving people to be in the sharing stage, because everybody has to be the same. And then at some point, people don't want to be a victim anymore. They're cottoned on to that it doesn't work. It's not the solution to always try to remedy your traumata and stuff like that. And then they might go on to the next flight of stairs, and the next step is the responsibility stage. And this is quite a radical change here, because people start taking responsibility for all their problems. Even if they have a genetic disease, they will say, yes, I have this disease because in my past life I've done this and this, and that got me that disease. Or even if they catch a virus, they say, well, my immune system was in a bad state because I was in a foul mood on that day. So they take responsibility for all of this. And the lower stages would think, that sounds terrible. That sounds like victim blaming. But for the responsibilities person, this is a great sense of liberation. Because if they caused all their problems, they can also cause all their happiness. And they go to work and they find modalities, they sort themselves out. And in that way, they become super successful. They can do things like maybe curing a disease that's deemed incurable, and do other things that are on the lower stages seen as impossible. And at that stage, the only downside is that people can become a little bit overconfident. They do the law of attraction, they manifest their dreams, they cure all their diseases, they think, I've done it, I'm enlightened, that's it. But they're not quite. They're not quite there yet. But we find that on the internet, an awful lot of people who say they are enlightened, when in truth they are on the responsibility level. And why the reason that they're not quite enlightened is that they still lack love and compassion. So even though they're more loving than, let's say, the obedience stage, they are not as fully loving as an enlightened person would be. And so they seek out to be more loving. They do more loving kindness meditation. They bless everybody, and they become what we would call in the Christian context like a saint. A truly serving people, a person for others, and with so much compassion and love, which is quite wonderful to see. And not many people are on that stage. It's not easy to do that. And the only downside on the love stage of consciousness is that sometimes people might be so compassionate that they might feel they have the weight of the world on their shoulders and become a little bit down about this. And that's the point where they might want to reach out in their meditations and spiritual practice for more practices that helps them to get in touch with the joy of their inner divine nature, which I call the bliss stage of consciousness. And here, the bliss stage of consciousness, as the name says, we will become incredibly happy. And also their supernatural powers increase, their healing abilities increase. They can become very clairvoyant and have all sorts of these types of abilities. And the only downside at that stage is that still there might be quite a lot of content in their unconscious mind, and that will come up at this time. And they have to clear that out, which is not a big problem if you know how to do this, but it is quite a bit of work. And if the person continues to work in this way, eventually the bliss will stabilize, and then they come to the highest stage, which is the enlightenment state. And at the enlightenment state, the person says, I am love. So the separation between me and I want something, and out there is a world and they have what I want and I want to get it and I can't and I'm frustrated, all that is completely gone. And instead there's just a general sense of compassion and love for all living beings, a desire to help them, and the person is able to ceaselessly to work for others. And that would be the final stage of the stairway of consciousness.
So this framework is very similar to, Ken Wilber, David Hawkins, spiral dynamics, as far as I can tell in terms of the broad strokes. But I get the sense that most people living in the world don't think in terms of these hierarchies, or well, not hierarchies and frameworks. In your experience, what makes you think it's so consistent in terms of the order that it flows in? And I guess the second question is that, like, I feel like most people don't run into people at the love, bliss, and enlightenment stage very much, if at all. So where are all those people? Have you met a lot of those people? Have you run into them in your own life?
Let's start with the last one. In Tibetan Buddhism, we are blessed to find quite a few enlightened beings. One stands out, which is the 16th Karmapa. There's also quite a few books written about him, about his incredible clairvoyance, his impact that he had on people. He did the black crown ceremony, where he wore a black crown, and people in droves were basically converted to Buddhism and followed him after seeing that. They had life-changing experiences that in that way. Another one that I personally love very much is Anandamayi Ma. Is a Hindu saint. Again, she had this amazing supernatural powers. She could take the illnesses of people onto herself. The Karmapa did that as well. So they take the illnesses of people, transform them in their own body, and help people to get over their illnesses. And yes, you don't see those people very often. There are the beacons of humankind. They're probably not our neighbor or something like that. And then to the first part of the question, how is this different? So I found that most stairways of consciousness that I studied, they were either excelling on the higher stages. For example, I refer quite a bit to Evelyn Underhill, who's written a very big tome which is called Mysticism, and she describes the higher stages quite well. Or they're quite good on the lower stages. For example, spiral dynamics, they say quite a number of good things on the lower stages, but they just don't know about the higher spiritual ones. And I also found spiral dynamics didn't really, in my opinion, the way I observed these things, they didn't really understand the very lowest. They believe that the innocent stage can only be found in some tribal communities. They're still living in the jungle, which I don't see like that. I think there's plenty of innocent people around also in our societies. And so while I've been inspired by these other descriptions, I think compared to Hawkins, I think mine is completely different. Without going into details, he has a very different ideas about this. Ken Wilber made really good points, like working out that some people are pre-rational, so that they are not capable of rational thinking, or they are post-rational, so they are capable of rational thinking, but they have intuitive abilities on top that they can use to augment their rationality. But they still are firmly placed in the camp of let's look for the evidence here. And if they don't have the evidence, they can say, well, my intuition tells me this and this, and it's usually right, but I can't prove it.
Got it.
Tara, for those who are new to the idea, what are the practical benefits of expanding one's level of consciousness, and how does someone go about identifying maybe where they're at within the framework today and then expand from there?
Yes, so the benefits I think I've just explained. With every stage you get happier and happier. You are more capable of dealing with adversity in your life. You feel less of a victim. You're better at your job, whatever it is. You might be able to become self-employed. And so, for example, at the responsibility, lots of people go self-employed, and they're usually successful because they have the discipline, they don't struggle with low discipline anymore, and they also have the intuition and the view. They can look ahead very well, and so you become more capable, happier, healthier in every respect with every stage that you go on. It's just only good. And the second question was, what was it? What can we do about it to go up?
You just how would someone begin by identifying where they're maybe at today and then go from there?
Yes, how they identified. well, I hope that in my book, or even in my small description, people have already started to identify themselves. And now I should add at this point that the stairway is not quite as rigid as I describe it now, because that's just for educational purposes. We can be in one day at various stages of consciousness. For example, in the morning, I have an argument with my husband and get a temper tantrum, fully invented example. Then I go right down to the dominant stage, right? Then in the afternoon, I have a wonderful meditation. I rest in wonderful states of bliss. I'm going right up to the bliss stage of consciousness. Then at night, I overeat, and then I binge watch the whole night a Netflix series. Then I'm right back to the innocent stage. Yeah, so I'm a little bit exaggerating here, but so this can happen. That we have remnants of the lower stages in us, to which we go under stress, or we in when we meditate or have a spiritual practice, we can actually go quite high. But we all have a predominant stage of consciousness from which we operate. And so let's say I'm a responsibility person and I get a temper tantrum, then afterwards I feel very guilty and I will apologize and, oh dear, what have I done? But if I'm a dominance person, I would not apologize. If somebody would ask me to apologize, I would get even angrier. And so that just shows that we have a predominant stage of consciousness, and the way we can find that out, I believe, just simply reading the book makes this quite clear. And hopefully also this introduction, people get a first idea where they are.
I think a question that follows immediately from that is, we're on a reasonably dark time in terms of the public domain, but there are, as you said, a lot of people moving, out of sharing into responsibility. If people wanted to move up the stairway as smoothly, efficiently, as responsibly as possible, how do you think they should start doing it?
Well, any genuine spiritual path or path of self-development will get you up the stairway of consciousness. So that in itself will be always good. But the more you actually can understand your own stage of consciousness and the one that is above, and basically just get informed about what it is, the easier it will be to do that. And I also want to say, because you said we are in dark time, the stairway of consciousness can also apply to history or to different countries, what they're doing in their political systems, in with their cultural beliefs. Now, I am not a historian or sociologist, so I have kept away from these questions, but this can all be applied to the Israel-Gaza conflict, to the liberals and Republicans in America, or what's happening in the UK now. So that is for everybody to find out themselves. So I will not say too much about it. But overall, this model is very optimistic, because you can easily see that humankind, even without being a historian, has moved from the lower stages gradually to the higher ones. So at the moment, our predominant stage in the Western world is the ambition stage, going heavily into sharing stage. And the way it looks, this is going to continue with a little bits of ups and downs here and there. But I find it very encouraging how much the world, even in my own lifetime, has moved from ambition stage up to the sharing stage. And I also see responsibility stage. For example, I brought up my son here in the UK in a normal comprehensive school, and I was so impressed by how they led this school. I could see lots and lots of responsibility behaviors of the teachers, how they taught these pupils, how they disciplined them. There was a lot of responsibility in there. I was very, very pleased with that.
Tara, within your book, you detail the sending love practice, which is truly the most powerful spiritual practice I've ever come across. Can you take a moment to explain the sending love practice, and then like tell us why it works so powerfully?
Yes, so when we send love, we imagine white light or another beautiful light of our choosing, and we imagine it around the person who either who we love or who we detest, because you can do that equally to your friends as to your enemies, and it's particularly powerful if you do it to your enemies. And you surround this person with this white light, and you imagine that the white light goes into the body of the person and into their heart and into their brain. And if this, let's say you send it to somebody who is quite aggressive, it will calm down their aggression. It will help them to think clearly. And when you do this visualization, you say in your mind to that person, I wish you to be happy and healed. And now you can also do that to whole countries. I have a lot of clients who are really, really upset about the Gaza situation, which obviously is understandable. So what I teach is to imagine white light going all over Israel, all over Gaza, no separation here, not one more than the other less, all get this beautiful white light going down on the whole region. You can also put all the other countries there around there as well. You can do it with the whole world. The white light goes down, it goes into the hearts of the people, into the minds. It alleviates all the suffering, all the aggression, all the hatred. It helps people to think rationally. And you say, I wish everybody to be happy and healed. And why that is so powerful, I hope if you just did this with me right at this moment, you can already notice how it soothes your own outrage, how your own anger. How can it be like this? This is all so unfair, and so on. And if you are soothed, whatever action you're taking after that will be more effective. Because if you come from your outrage, from your anger, then you usually, angry yourself. You're just adding to any kind of conflict there is. But if you come from this place of compassion and love, then you usually your responses are much wiser. So if I, in my own life, have a personal conflict, let's say with a neighbor or something, I try never to act immediately. I do this meditation 2 or 3 days. And if I feel in my being that the conflict has alleviated, then I might take action, whatever it is. And in 10 out of 10 cases, I can say this always works so quickly that the conflict somehow alleviates. I never end up in any kind of feuds or long ongoing animosity with people around me, neither in my personal relationships and also, let's say with the politicians or anything in societies which could easily upset you. I do this white light, and I also teach that to my clients, and you can cope with the situation better, and you can take better action. Even if you are a political activist, then you can do your activism with more kindness and more effectiveness, as if you would be just coming from aggression and anger yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, I found it, as I said, life-changing. And within literally 6 weeks, I felt as if I'd cleaned up my entire timeline, everyone I'd ever maybe had a struggle with, and even the folks that, are in my life today is truly amazing. Tara, I also loved your book on manifesting, which
Oh,
uh, you caveat that when it comes to manifesting, we shouldn't necessarily be asking for material success or comfort, but rather for those things that benefit all creation. In your experience, have you seen that reality is truly responsive in this way? And to what degree can we use this technique towards helping to create a better world?
Yes, if I may correct you there, what I'm saying in the book is wish forever for whatever you want, even if it's material. Maybe you want a house, or you need a car or something like that. Um, you can wish for that, but try to have an altruistic add-on to it. Let's just say you want to have a house, then you can say, in this house, everybody who's in this house shall be happy. It may be a house in which you can invite your friends, or maybe you have a room in the house where you can have clients for which you give some treatment in case you are a healer of some sort, so that you always add this altruistic aspect to it. And for that reasons, it is not necessary to wish for money, because you can just wish for what you want to have, wish for this the house that you want to have, or the garden, or the whatever it is that you want. And is it responsive to that? For my own life, I can say absolutely yes. I do these techniques since 40 years. I started in my early 20s, and now I'm in my 60s. And I can say that everything good in my life, my health, my house, my marriage, my work, my spiritual accomplishments, everything I have visualized beforehand. Nothing good in my life is here just by accident. This has stopped decades ago. Everything good I have in my life is consciously pulled in through these techniques that are described in this book, which are very similar to the law of attraction, but with the Buddhist understanding of this whole thing, so that you use these techniques wisely for wishes that actually bring happiness, or not just further problems, because then you have this and that, and you wanted it all, and then you just have more problems than before. That's not the idea.
Yeah, maybe a follow-up to that. I've always been concerned, not that manifestation doesn't work, that I'm more concerned that it does, and that basically people, you're not smarter than the universe. You're not smarter than what wants to unfold, and that we manifest our will, as you say, kind of naively. So how should people think about the intelligence of their manifesting wishes, and whether they are indeed altruistic or whether they're too materialist?
Well, if you think about what altruistic means, it means to bring love and healing to all, and not just to yourself. The selfishness is to make yourself better at the expense of others. And altruism means to bring something good to yourself and everybody else, like bring happiness to your entire family, to the entire human family. And if I've just given one example how you can transform your house into this type of thinking, but you can do it with everything, particularly with your work. You can say, is my work ultimately benefiting everybody? And so we have wonderful spiritual teachers, Jesus, Buddha, or Lao Tzu, or from other religions, and they pointed us the way, to want things that are good for others, to focus on love and compassion. uh, this is not new. Every spiritual teacher worth their salt is telling us this, and we just need to ask ourselves, well, if I have this thing that I want to have, um, how can that be beneficial for others too? And this is actually not really so difficult to find. And so then we can take out those wishes which come purely from ego. And from ego means it's good for myself and bad for others. And so we say, no, I don't do that, because I know this will karmically come back to me like a boomerang. I don't want to do to others these types of things, because they will do this back to me, or somebody else will do this back for me. And so I can say for myself that if you wish in this way, that it's good for everybody, it will bring true happiness. Particularly, it's lasting. It's not just this yacht on the Mediterranean where you sit and then you get really, really bored because you're just sitting on a boat in a lot of water and don't know what to do. nothing against a yacht. I mean, if you have the ability to put this into an altruistic endeavor and you do something good for humankind by having this yacht, then that would be a good wish too. Well, it's just an example.
Well, that leads me into the next question, which is that I think a lot of people, particularly in the West, can hear words like love and bliss and enlightenment and feel there's an element of passivity or even bypassing around that. But one thing you're very clear about is the relationship between power and love and the importance of wisdom. But there's a very agentic core to your ideas that involves, action in the world. Can you talk about mastery and your relationship with mastery as you hit the higher levels in terms of being active in the world?
Yes. So if you look at the stages of consciousness, you can see all sorts of patterns in them. And one pattern is that every other stage deals with love, and every other stage deals with power. So while the pendulum at the lower stages swings very far from being completely powerless to extremely trying to exert your power, and to the degree that might get you into prison, the pendulum will, as you go up the stairway of consciousness, swing less and less into the extremes until you arrive in the stage of enlightenment, which is equal love and power, where love still has the priority. Yeah, and this ability that you are loving and powerful obviously makes your love more powerful. Yeah, this is very good. You can actually truly benefit other beings, just like what I said about the Karmapa with his black crown. He was just sitting there with the black hat on his head, and he had this amazing impact on people because he could uh, radiate love and power in equal measures. But if you have power, lots of power, and love, then of course you are an evil force in the world. So we need to bring this together. If you just use, if you use your power and you have no love, then by definition you will use it for your own selfish gains. And so therefore we always need to complement those two things. And the better we can do that, the more wisdom and love we have to give to the world, but we also have the ability that lots and lots of people are listening and actually adopting our ideas.
Tara, thank you. That's a great explanation. As we work with many high agency individuals who are also interested in the mystical and expanding their consciousness, one thing we hear often is sometimes something like, my spouse or my partner just isn't into this stuff like I am. And so the path ends up being quite lonely for them. You've got an entire book called or about soulmate relationships, and I'm curious if you have any thoughts you'd like to share for those who are facing this dilemma in their own life.
Yes, to a degree, every couple face that dilemma because it is quite unlikely that we are 100% on one level. So one is always a little bit ahead than the other. And so we shouldn't have this wrong expectation that we can be perfectly aligned because that would be unrealistic. And so I'm married to 27 years, very happily. But I also have this situation with my own husband, that one of us is a little further ahead and the other less. So the first advice I give is do not give up on your partner. Try to get them into this whole thing. Don't stop telling them how you feel, what you experience. You don't try to missionize them, but tell them how you felt when you went to this Buddhist center and had a meditation, or you went to this weekend and had this and these experiences. Even if your partner thinks this is all woo-woo, still tell them and basically demand from them that they should listen with interest and compassion. I think that you can demand that in a good relationship. What I've seen with my clients, if people say, oh, my partner is not interested, so I stop talking to them, that's the first nail in the coffin of the relationship. That is just a matter of time until that goes apart. So that's what I would say. Now, if your partner is somewhat interested and wants to develop, you can make a pact with them. And the pact is like this, that you sit together and then you ask, what is the highest purpose of our relationship? Maybe apart from bringing up children, or, what do we actually want to achieve here? And then hopefully, even with a less spiritual partner, you can agree on that we want to unfold our highest potential. And what would that be? To be more loving and wise. You don't have to be spiritual to have those values. And then you can agree that, yes, this is our mutual goal in the relationship, and we want to help each other to achieve it. And we also allow the other partner to guide us if we lose our path. And with that one, you have permission to correct selfish behavior in your partner, or unloving or unspiritual behavior, and without even talking about esoteric beliefs like, is there a God? You don't even need all that. It's just about becoming a more loving person. And then you can use your relationship as a vehicle for spiritual growth, even with the partner who officially is an atheist or an agnostic, because that is not really that important. What is important is to become a more loving person, and in that way, these differences can be bridged. And this is a quite unpopular idea, I have to say. My clients say, my female clients often say, then they say, no, I have already 2 teenagers, I don't want a third, I don't want to teach my husband. And then I say to them, okay, if you know a better model, tell me. Then I become your student. I have not come across a better model than that. And that is what I'm living with my own husband. And I have to say, it is quite a bit of work, but it works wonderfully. And it is very, very satisfying. I can recommend it.
That prompts another question from me, which is, I've always felt that in my relationship with my spouse, she always wants kind of grounding practices in there's the abstract idea and the frameworks. She's not interested at all. And you've got a background in Qigong, in Tibetan Buddhism. You've done all this work with Kundalini. Are there specific practices, one, that you found particularly useful, but also two, that you could potentially do as a couple to help make this a more communitarian experience?
Well, I think that's very individual. By the way, with Qigong, I only came to that in a more deeper way to improve my health. And so that was really about that. I think you need to do the practices with your partner that appeal to both of you, and what that is, maybe you're into shamanism or into something completely different than Qigong. Not everybody likes Qigong, and also most people only really get into that when they feel their health is a bit wobbly, then they think, I need to change something. And so most people you see in the Qigong courses, they're over 60. And but that doesn't say younger people can't do it. Of course, it would be good. The younger, the better. But I very much would recommend doing loving kindness meditation, and doing this also with your partner. So to send your partner love, and send yourself love, and love yourself with all your problems and weaknesses, not just the good bits, but particularly the stuff that you feel is not so great, is shaming or embarrassing or weak or something, and that you love yourself with that. And if you can love yourself like that, you will be also more able to love your partner. And so you can basically sit across each other and do this loving kindness meditation that I described before, that you send each other loving light. Imagine it goes into your partner, fills her up, and she does that with you. It is a very beautiful experience.
That does sound absolutely lovely. Thank you. So I understand you had your own spiritual awakening when you were relatively young, and now you help a lot of people with their own Kundalini awakenings. Could you just describe what that looks like and how you help people?
Yes, so my own Kundalini awakening was happening at the age of 17, which is super young. It's usually a sign that I had already awakened Kundalini in my previous life, that it just continued on from this life because I didn't do anything specifically apart from that I had my first boyfriend, and then it just exploded. And then, I mean, these were still the dark ages. That was in 1977. So no internet, no nothing. No, the only book that existed on Kundalini that was widely known was from Gopi Krishna. That only came out in the 80s. Of course, I hadn't got a clue about anything. And then I only realized at the age of 40 or so that I actually had a Kundalini awakening and that I've had it already for over 20 years. And so that explained a lot of things in my life. You know, I suddenly understood why I felt so different from normal society, why I was so deeply immersed into spirituality, why I constantly had to develop myself while other people seemed to just live their life. You know, for me, life was a project to be solved or a problem to be solved, and I had to work at everything. And so it explained a lot. And now, luckily, through being a part of Tibetan Buddhism, I had a lot of help in that respect, even though that didn't even say that officially. The teachings were framed in a way that it would help a person with a Kundalini awakening, all of which I didn't know. And then I felt like, you know, I have seem to have mastered my own Kundalini awakening. I would like to help others, you know, to do that. And that was, you know, in 2010, around that time. And the internet just got really going. You know, Skype was just invented. Now it's been discontinued again. And so then I made myself a website and try to help people. And this work has really very much exploded. I have hundreds of people on my waiting list. Unfortunately, it's a long waiting list. Uh, and I've written 2 books about it, about what to do in the Kundalini process. So the Kundalini process you can basically describe as a spiritual awakening. And there are certain symptoms that you have when you had a Kundalini awakening. And one is that you become so intensely focused on spirituality. And secondly, that from the time you had this awakening, your emotions seem to go into much greater extremes than before, both ways, down to lots more anxiety and despair, but equally, not for everybody at the beginning, to the highest levels of bliss. You seem to oscillate between the two. You are extremely sensitive to sense with your sensations of noise and light and vibrations and stuff like that. I can see in your face, so you're nodding, you know all this, yeah, good. And then, you know, you have energy movements in your body. You feel as if you have a washing machine in one chakra and energy dams in other parts of the body. And where before there was just like numb flesh, there's suddenly, you know, a whole circus unfolding in your body and you don't know what it is. Heat up the spine and all sorts of things. And then for many people also paranormal experiences. So this is my own Kundalini test. So if any of the viewers want to know whether they have a Kundalini awakening, there is a free test on my website. You just need to put your name into the subscription box, and then you get this test for free. And then people can check whether they had a Kundalini awakening. And this Kundalini awakening, you know, accelerates your urge to go up the stairway of heaven. You know, it basically more or less pushes you up there, screaming and kicking, whether you like it or not. Either you do the work voluntarily, or it gives you so much suffering until you do. But once you do it, it becomes very rewarding, and because it makes the ascent much easier.
Yeah, as you can tell from the nodding that I was doing, I had my own experience at 36, so I was less precocious than you. But one of the things that when I was researching this, and you talked about how the paranormal experiences are the calling card of the Kundalini experience, I had my own experiences of precognition and kind of empathy at a distance. I could feel other people's emotions within about 12 feet. And for me, as someone who came from a totally rationalist mindset, it kind of broke my worldview. But you've also talked about these kinds of abilities coming online around about the bliss stage. And what we're seeing within our community as well is, reasonably normal professionals starting to come into their intuitive gifts. But this, I think, is an aspect of society that's been pretty neglected, denigrated, mocked. What do you think is the role of like these cities and powers in spiritual development?
Yes. So if I may say one thing, at the beginning of a Kundalini awakening, people sometimes have paranormal experiences, but many do not. This is something that comes later. Often people experience more tumultuous phases in the beginning where lots of negative emotions come up, and they have to sort that out first. And then once the whole thing calms down, then the paranormal experiences come in. And yes, as an ambition stage society, these paranormal experiences are mocked, denied, and said they don't exist. But as we move as a society more into the higher stages of consciousness, there are more recognized. Maybe one example is the near-death experiences. I have heard people saying 20 years ago in the US, if you would say to a doctor that you had a near-death experience, they put you on the psychiatric ward. I don't think they do that today. All these apparitions that you get shortly before dying is now part of the curriculum. They teach that to hospice nurses, that they know to expect that, and to inform the families that this is normal, that is quite good. And so even in that place, things are moving forward into the right direction. And yes, it will take some time until the entire society is more open to these types of things. But we need to also understand this complete denial of the spiritual and the paranormal is only in the ambition stage. All other stages of consciousness are open for these types of things. Even a dominance person will put a talisman into his car for protection, and they might wear a brooch with to ward off the evil eye, as it's been done in more traditional societies. It's just the ambition stage that is so adamant that none of this exists. And even they now know from quantum physics that very, very weird things seem to exist. So they cannot really uphold these views very much, at least not for very much longer, I think. So I think they will become more integrated. And the very fact that we're sitting here and having this type of conversation, can talk about this so openly, like 30 years ago, I had to keep it secret that I was a Buddhist because it was still a taboo. You couldn't say that, at your workplace or anything. Now you wear it as a badge of honor. Oh, I've been a Buddhist for 40 years. People are impressed.
That kind of leads me to another question, which is that for better or for worse, I guess for better and for worse, substances and psychedelics have experienced a very, very dramatic resurgence in culture. And when I was researching this conversation, I was very interested in the fact that you had, fairly strong views about the use of substances on the spiritual path from your own experience. I was wondering if you could share that with the audience.
Well, yes, I have a quite dim view on them. And the reason is I used to be a drugs counselor. I only saw those people who were crashed in psychotic breakdowns, vegetated in the psychiatry, in terrible states of psychosis. And as a Kundalini therapist, I also have a lot of people who had their Kundalini awakening through cannabis use or ayahuasca use. And I can say these are the people who definitely have the hardest time of all of them. They are partly maybe semi-psychotic. They have paranoid fears. And some people come back from Peru after taking the ayahuasca and the toad and whatever, and in full-blown psychosis. Maybe clients I've known for years, and they go down the drain. And they have been on a beautiful path of development, and it's kind of destroyed through these types of experiences. I've got other clients who have a diagnosis of schizophrenia for 20 years, suffer terribly from one single LSD trip. I just know too many of these cases that I could endorse this as a viable path. And obviously I know lots of people taking these drugs and maybe have even very good experiences, but I am more tuned into the dangers of this. So that's what I contribute to this discussion. And I know it's not what many people want to hear, but there it is.
Thank you.
Well, Tara, if it isn't obvious, we just love your books and your exercises and your teachings. And so as we head to wrap up, we'd be remiss if we didn't ask what's coming up next for you.
At the moment, I mentioned the topic of health. I'm writing a new book. It's called The 7 Pillars of Health. And one of the pillars is the Qigong, and other things are a diet, but all the rest of it is more how you can, through changing your mind and your emotions, you can also heal your body, and how that works. And it's very much backed up with a lot of science. So this is not just what I believe or what I think. There's scientific studies for all of what I'm saying, even though, again, it's very cutting edge, to say, I can heal my body with the power of my mind, my emotions. And so I'm working on that, and the book will hopefully come out next year.
Very exciting.
Tara, thank you so much. Jeff, thank you so much. This has been a really fantastic conversation, and we look forward to following your work closely in future.
Thank you very much for inviting me.